All right, again, today is Tuesday, the 17th of November. This is 152, 148, the PHP class. And I've asked people to go out to the P drive for the class and copy the folder with today's date on it to your htdocs folder. Now, the project is actually done, but it won't work the way it is because of where some of this stuff is located. So I want to explain to you everything that's in this folder. So if you take a look up on the screen here, these are the files that are in there. All right, you'll notice that there's two .sql files, even though it says they're Microsoft Server, they're not. They're MySQL files. All right, so there's two MySQL files right here, and there's about 7, 8, whatever that adds up to, PHP files. Okay, the author had some things in there that they didn't work all that great, but this should work just fine now. Please look up on the screen, because I want you to look in particular at these two files. The first one is called Create Quotes. This is going to create a database for you that's called Quotes. Makes sense, right? Now he calls it My Quotes. If you'd like to change it to My Quotes, then do that. It doesn't really matter. I guess you could say that I kind of did a piss poor practice here, pardon my French, because I've got a database and a table with the same name. Technically, you really shouldn't do that, all right? But I did, okay. So what this says, again, in English, if you remember this from your class, the MySQL class, this says, if the database did exist, drop it. And if it doesn't exist, you'll probably get a warning saying that there is no database by that name. But when you run this, the reason I'm telling you this is if you had a database that was set up that's called Quotes, it'll now be removed. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Then we're telling it to create a new database called Quotes and make that database active. That database called Quotes will have a table by the same name that's called Quotes. It'll have in it a primary key of quote ID. Remember, this is auto increment again because it's MySQL. It'll have the actual quote itself. It'll have a thing called source. And what source means is basically who made the quote. All right. We're allowed to say whether or not the quote is a favorite or not. Basically, that's a Boolean. It's one of our favorite quotes, and I'll show you what I did for that in just a minute. We've got date entered. That means when was the quote entered. And our primary key will be quote ID. Notice you must have a comma here, 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 here. You cannot have a comma here. You need the paren there. You need the paren there, and because it's a command, you need the whoops, not like that. You need a semicolon on the end. That should all be review from last semester from the MySQL class. All right? So, if you have not done so, start up XAMPP. I'm going to take for granted you haven't done that. So start up XAMPP. All right? The way that I'm going to show you to do this, is it the best way? It's the way I'm going to show you to do it. All right? Probably isn't the best way, but it's going to work. And I don't want to worry right now about playing with paths or anything else. I want us to create the database. I want us to populate the database. Does that make sense to everybody? All right. Does your screen look like this? If it does, click the button here that says Shell. All right. Again, we're going into MySQL from the command line. So type in MySQL space -u root. So you're going in there as the admin. MySQL space -u root. Make sure when you did this that you got in by clicking the shell right there, because otherwise it's not going to work. So MySQL -u root, hit enter. If you get a magical screen with all this stuff on it, you're now into MySQL, but you're in at the command line. All that makes sense. Anybody have any problem with that? Okay, what was the problem? Like I said, the way I'm showing it to you now is the fastest way of doing this. Maybe not the best way, syntactically or otherwise, of doing it. But I want you to open up that file I just showed you right here. That's called Create Quotes. I don't care what editor you use, but open it up in some editor do a Control A, Control C to copy it, and then paste it in. You can't do a Control V here, so just paste it in. Boom. Now I created the database. Does that make sense? I just ran that file and I created the database here. All right? So again, if you missed that part, go back to this file that's called Create Quotes that's under the folder I just asked you to copy. Highlight the entire file, copy it to the clipboard, go back into here, right mouse click, and choose Paste. I'm not going to do it again because it would delete it and recreate it, but I don't feel the need to do that. If you just do a Control V here, see what it puts? A Control V. So you don't want to do that. All right? You want to right mouse click and choose Paste. Did anybody have any problems doing that? No? All right. Then we want to go to the other database, which is Fill Quotes. I made this. I went out to a site that had famous quotes, and it had quotes by like 17 different people. So I grabbed a bunch of them. All right? It was interesting because it just let me break away from this and read some quotes from other people. So that's what I did. So what this is, the null represents the ID. By putting null in there, we're letting the system fill in that value for us. This is the quote. For instance, insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. All right? That's Einstein. All right, so that's it. If we kept going onto this, you'll notice it goes quite a ways out here. Albert Einstein's the one who wrote it. One means it is a favorite, and now means that it was created right now at this date and time. Does that make sense? So what we have in here are 17 quotes. There's our insert into right here. You may or may not remember that. All right? And I just want to say one thing. This is the kind of thing where I can get Jeff to get himself into a lot of trouble for saying it, but he's saying it anyway. I don't know who you had for the 152, 147 class. Okay? I don't know. And as it turns out, I really don't care because it doesn't matter. You've already taken it. But and this includes me also. If you take a class here and you think that, for lack of better words, and pardon my French because it's being taped, all right, but if you think that the class was a bunch of crap and you didn't learn anything, it is your responsibility to go to the dean and tell her that. When I hear people tell me, yeah, I took this class from so-and-so and I didn't learn anything, then you have to say something. We have had teachers here, Mike knows of some of them. We have had teachers here in the last couple of years that literally bring students into the classroom, and what they do is they say, okay, here's Jeff's tapes, go watch them. That's against the law to do that. They're getting paid to have you watch something that I created. All right, when I heard about that, I wanted to punch the person in the mouth, and I didn't even give a damn that they were a woman. But when I hear this stuff, yeah, I had this class with so-and-so, and that includes me. So if there's something that you don't like, if you don't say anything, it isn't going to change. Yes?
Yeah, I don't want to break your subject here, but are we supposed to run this in the...
What we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a Control A, Control C, just like we just did, and we're going to paste it in. Okay? So now you should have, so if I look right here, if I say describe table, or I'm sorry, show tables. I got quotes, correct? You see it. If I say describe quotes, which is my table, there's the fields. If I say select star from quotes, it's going to look like I threw up because it's just all over the place. But if I say, for example, select, what do we have here? It's quote ID, and we'll put everything but the quote itself. So quote ID, source, favorite, that's enough. From quotes. Now you can see those are what we're put in there. Again, I'm not showing you the quotes right now, but we've got a quote from each of these people. And I put them in the same order they were in on the website. And I Googled quotes from famous people. You know, and of course, you had to include some of these, like Dr. Seuss, Muhammad Ali. All right, who said some of the coolest things I've ever heard? All right. Favorites. If it's a 1, it means it's a favorite. I just made those up. I didn't put any rhyme or reason. With some of them I put 0s and some of them I put 1s. They don't mean anything. Okay? So now we have a database. All right? Now we have a database and we have records in the database. Does all that make sense? All right. Now, these can both be closed now because we don't need these anymore. Save it? No, I don't think so. All right. But there's one more thing that we have to do. In this list of files that I gave you, that's right here, this 1117, what the author expects is this file right here, this one. All right? We got to do 2 things. We got to take this file and we've got to move it. Then we've got to take each one of these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. These 7 files here, but not the MySQL cut. These right here. We've got to put those 7 files, or I advise you to copy them. You have to copy those 7 files right underneath htdocs. So in other words, highlight all of these except the MySQL Connect. So highlight, 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 and highlight. Does that make sense? So with those all highlighted, right mouse click, choose copy. All right, and make sure that you're on your C drive, XAMPP, htdocs, right there, and then pop them in. And if you don't know what I just said or you have any problems, raise your hand.
These 3.
Oh, no, all of them except the MySQL Connect. Not those. All the PHP ones. So hold on the control key. Right, all those. Now copy that to the clipboard. Now, you're in the folders 1117.
Right.
He doesn't want that, so you've got to back up a folder. So you literally just click your back button, which puts you in htdocs. Now right mouse click on here and choose paste. One more thing to do, and then we're ready to actually run this. Then we'll go back and take a look at it. All right? What he also expects is the one other file that we did not move. First, you don't have to open it. I'm going to. I just want to show it to you. Pretty simple file. This says, attempt to connect to MySQL using localhost root with no password. This says, attempt to select the quotes database that we just created. We need that file in virtually every single one of these other files that we're going to use. But because one of the things that the author tries to do is show you good programming principles, he says we shouldn't have this file where other people can see it. Why? Because it shows us our connection, our login, and our password. So you really shouldn't have those right under htdocs. So you have to take that file. So if you can highlight just that file, MySQL Connect, right mouse click on it, choose copy, and then move up, and you want to put that under C:\XAMPP, not htdocs, just under XAMPP. Notice mine's already there. If you have problems with that, raise your hand. Because once we've done that, we're ready to actually look at the program. All right, but we're going to go through the chapter, but now you've got everything set up.
Should we delete the other one from the hot docs?
The other what?
The
other MySQL Connect. You can either rename it, or you can move it someplace, or you can remove it. I'm not sure what's in there. All right, that's probably something you created before.
No, I'm talking about this MySQL.
Oh, where it is? You mean from what?
I got it in the hot docs. You said to take it out and move it.
No, I said you can move it, you can copy it. It doesn't matter.
Oh, okay.
But I just don't want it there.
Okay. But do we delete the one that
Say
was
copy
in the hot
replace.
docs?
Yeah, you copied it on accident is what happened. You were supposed to copy it.
Oh, you said copy.
No, just right
This
there.
one.
Just take it out of there and move it up one folder.
Okay, where is it now? I don't see somehow.
It should, well, click under the date modified. Literally click on where it says date modified. Go back up to the top. Click it again. Where it says date modified. I want to see where are you? C:\. You want it to be under
Example.
XAMPP, so double click on XAMPP. Now right mouse click. And choose paste. Click copy and replace. There it is. All right. Has everybody done that? So I want to show you. This is maybe the world's worst interface, but this is Larry Ullman's. It's not Jeff Scott's. All right? So when we go in here to run this, I don't need any of this stuff that we're working on before. So I'm going to start up and I'm going to run this. So I'm going to say http://localhost/index.php. That's the whole interface. Header here, navigation here. But notice, insanity. So now I can go to the latest, I can go to a random quote, I can go to a favorite quote. Make sure you're able to do that so when we back up and look at it, you'll be able to go through all the stuff that's in the book. All right? Like I said, not a very pretty interface, but it's functional. I think I know why he did what he did, but unless he was right here to tell me, yep, that's why I did it that way, or nope, you're totally screwed up. All right? But we're going to run through what's in the chapter. It's not really a terribly long chapter. We'll finish it sometime right around 4 o'clock. All right? Because you need to not hear me anymore today, and I need to not talk anymore today.
It looks like we're all getting the same thing.
I have all warnings.
Warnings. No such file or directory.
What file or directory?
Templates dash header.html.
All right, well, we'll fix it then. All right. Robert, you said that's in the index file, correct? All right, so let me take a look. We'll get it to work. Whatever it is, since everybody's getting it, it's probably something fairly simple that maybe I forgot to tell you to do. I don't know. All right. So that should be index should be here. Type. htdocs.
I don't think we have those files. Header.html functions.
Okay. Yeah, you might not. Okay. All right. The reason that you're probably getting those, I thought I copied everything over. Maybe I didn't. All right, let's check. So, yeah, I don't see them there, so that'd be a very good possibility. So let me find them. You got everything's actually working, believe it or not, but you're referencing the header and the footer file, the one that says header here, navigation here, all that stuff. You don't have that. So I've got to give that to you. I thought I did. I didn't. So sorry. All right, so I got to find it so I can give it to you. I don't want his. I want mine. Michael, I'll be on our phone. That's going to be it. Copy. All right. Boy, I wish I'd have done this again. All right, if you'd all look up on the screen, please. Okay. I just added that includes folder into the folder I had you copy before. Grab that includes folder. Grab the includes folder from the P drive. On the same place where you grab the other stuff, just grab the includes folder and copy that. It should be under C:\XAMPP htdocs. I apologize. Again, if you have problems, raise your hand, please.
So you just want us to drop it right in the htdocs?
That's correct.
Awesome.
Try doing that and then try to refresh your page and see if that fixes everything. What?
Yeah,
Okay. You got warnings? What do your warnings say?
Same, include template header.html, failed to open stream. Then you include function, failed to open templates, header.
There's header and there's footer. In there, it's under includes. I thought that's what they asked for it to be under. You are getting the header and footer because if it's showing that, does it show that on the top of your screen? The header here, footer here? No? Okay, then it's a pathing problem. All right. I'll tell you what. Let's go through the chapter because I'll let Ullman tell me where that should be. Is that fair enough? All right. And if anybody by 4 o'clock doesn't have this working, then just raise your hand and I'll work with you individually and we'll get it working before you leave today. All right? All right. So I'm going to jump back and I'm going to actually open up the book. This is the last chapter of this book. PDFs. So this is chapter 13, whichever one of these it is, from the book. All right, so this is what we're going to go over right now. I want to mention one thing. I know I get myself sidetracked. I'm trying not to, but I want to say this to you just so you know. If you haven't already seen or heard this, these are your books for spring. Right here. All right? And in fact, Mike, I'm going to have to run off a copy of both this one and the other one for you to make sure that Kristen buys at least one copy that you and John can share, or ideally 2 copies. So you've each got one. All right. And I just wanted you to see this. This is the book that'll be used for the iOS class, the one used for the Android class. This is the one that's going to be used for the DIP class, which is design and implementation projects. I know Eric had asked at the beginning of class, do we do anything with Angular? Well, notice the title of the book. And it's interesting because for whatever reason, they put it in alphabetic order. AngularJS, JavaScript, and jQuery. But this book gives you about 6 to 8 chapters of JavaScript, followed by about 6 to 8 chapters of jQuery, followed by about 6 to 8 chapters of AngularJS. Does all that make sense? We're going to whip through the JavaScript stuff fairly quickly. Okay? Then we're going to get to the jQuery. This is where I mentioned this to you before, because I heard people come up to me at the end of last semester telling me they learned nothing from that class. Or everything I learned from that class, I learned myself. Well, that's not the way that it's supposed to be. All right? And I'm sure that the instructor did not mean to teach it in that way. To be fair to the instructor, he found out a week before he was teaching the class that he was teaching the class. All right? It's not what I wanted, but it's what the school wanted. So we're going to go and spend quite a bit of time on jQuery. And when I say we're going to have some examples, we'll have hundreds of examples. What I hope to be able to do in this class is starting on day 1, we're going to build a website as a class. And in that website, we're going to put examples of JavaScript, jQuery, HTML5, CSS3, and eventually AngularJS. All right? Just so you know what's going on. All right. So, jumping back then and taking a look at what the author talks about. I don't want to read a line from his book. All right? But what he says is this chapter attempts, as the title says, to take everything that we've done in the first 13 chapters and combine it, give you a little bit of everything that's in there. That's the idea. So he says that when you start with a website, the first thing that you should really do when you start with a website is you ought to come in and have some kind of an idea what the website's supposed to be about, okay? And Luke, it's very interesting because you said yours is working now, but my guess is all the stuff that's in here, this stuff, all right, I don't have that shown on mine either. It might be that mine is pathed incorrectly.
It doesn't look anything like
We
that.
don't have it's supposed to go to templates and then it has the header
Yeah.
and the footer. We don't have the templates folder.
Yes, well, you don't because I stuck everything in the includes folder.
I don't think it's in there either though.
Well, there's a header file. I didn't call him the same thing he did.
It's supposed to be like header.html.
Yes.
Should we change it then?
No.
In the code.
No. And I'll tell you why when we get to that, okay? All right. So what he's done with this site is if you look at the page right here, this is what a typical person logging into the site would see. My site of quotes. It has some kind of a quote in it, right there, who it's from. Do you want the latest quote? Do you want a random quote, or do you want a favorite quote? Okay, that's what you should see. I'm not saying that's what you do see. I'm saying that's what you should see. Then this, where it says my site of quotes, access denied, that is what you'll see if you try to get into the administrative part of the site and you're not an administrator. All right? So in other words, you're trying to get into the admin page, but you don't have admin permissions. So it should come back and say your access was denied. Okay? It's the same kind of thing that I would get if I tried to get into one of your virtual desktops. Access denied, because I don't have access to it. All right? All right. The site will use a CSS template, and he thanks the guy who gave it to him. It'll have one table. That's the same thing I had you do. That was in that create database.sql file that was right there. This is the way he tells you to set the site up on page 381. So again, where he's got web root, that's our htdocs. And he says that the SQL Connect file, that SQL Connect file should not be under htdocs. It should be one up higher. That's what he's showing here. But under the web root, we could have a CSS folder if we wanted it. We could have the deletes, all the other stuff. All right? And I don't even know where the hell I did with the CSS file. All right, I have that, but I don't know where it is. You don't have that either. Okay, so we'll have to get you that too. So if you look, what I did stupidly was under the includes, I've got both the functions.php file and these two files. Okay, I shouldn't have done that, but I did do it. So let's talk about an easy way to fix that. All right? The easiest way I can think of fixing that, and some of you probably have already figured it out, but I'm going to just go back to this where I have all these, and I'm going to grab that includes, and I want to grab the footer ink and the header ink. Those look like they'd be ones that he did. So let me double check these first. They should be fine. All right, so I'm going to grab the header ink and the footer ink. So I'm going to grab those two files, right mouse click, and I'm going to choose copy. All right, then I'm going to go back to under XAMPP htdocs. Now I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add that folder, which you said was called templates. So I'm going to add a folder called templates, not templates, templates. And underneath there, all right, I've already got them in here. Okay, and let me look at these. That should be the exact same thing. Yep. What I did, he's got footer ink and header ink. I renamed them footer.html and header.html. It doesn't matter which way you do it. All right. The reason that include file like that, some people believe whenever you stick an include file into PHP, you put INC in it someplace. I have no problem with that at all. All right, but a lot of those people take it and they call it header.inc.php. There is nothing in either one of those files but straight HTML. So I just call them header HTML and footer HTML. If you want to keep them as header.inc and footer.inc, that's fine. That shouldn't be any kind of problem. All right. All right. So before the end of the period, somebody please remind me, because I'll have to find that CSS file too, so we can pretty this thing up. All right, so this is how your site should be set up. This is what the authors say. That's how it should be set up. All right? So we've talked about this in an earlier chapter, but let's just spend a couple minutes going over what's in blue up on the upper right-hand corner of the screen here. This is a file that will be used in virtually every one of the PHP files, because those PHP files that we created do what? They allow you to add a quote, to delete a quote, to modify a quote, etc. All those operations are going to require the database, because as you add or delete or modify a quote, you want it to be updated immediately in the database. So this file that we put up above our htdocs folder is our MySQL Connect file. All right? And I didn't even notice this, but you may or may not remember this. I talked about this in an earlier class. This file stinks. And what I mean is, what he should have used in here, instead of MySQL Connect, he should have used MySQL I Connect. He didn't. It works. I'm not going to dink with that. We've got enough other stuff that we can dink with. But what this says in English is, okay, what I want you to do, attempt to connect to MySQL. All right? We're doing it through localhost. We have to change this. You can't have username. Yours has to be root right there, so I changed it accordingly. And this, we have no password, so I changed that accordingly. So this is saying attempt to connect to MySQL. This is saying once you've done that, attempt to connect to the database. Again, he called it my quotes. I didn't notice that till I'd already done it, so mine's called quotes. It doesn't matter. If you use the files, the MySQL Connect file I asked you to copy over, yours is correct. All right? So if you need more on how to connect to the database, all the stuff I just explained, he mentions here. All right. Then turning to the next page. I don't know why the author did what he did here. Again, not being Larry Ullman, okay, the author of the book. What he does is he has a single function that's in here in that includes file. So let's bring up that function and take a quick look at that function. All right, it's called functions.php. He called it functions, all right? He called it functions with an S, thinking that you might want to add more to this later, okay? All right, the one function that's in here is it checks the system to see whether or not you've got a cookie. And that cookie, the name should be Samuel and the value should be Clemens. You know, Mark Twain, real name of Mark Twain. So that's what he used in there as a key value pair. What he says is on your machine, remember that cookies reside on the client side. So what he's saying is if you have a cookie on your machine that's got a name of Samuel and a value of Clemens, then you've been deemed that you are an administrator. So since you are an administrator, return true. If you don't have the cookie, return false because you're not an administrator. That's why he calls the function is administrator. And when you call it, since he set up default values, which is what these are, you can just call is administrator. You don't have to check. You don't have to add name and value. All right? The system will go in there and check and see if you have a cookie with this name and with this value. All right? And that's exactly what he's saying in here. Again, you can read all that yourselves. But it's on 383, 384, all right? And that gets us to 385. On 385, creating the template. If you look up on the screen here, because we can make this real easy. You see all the stuff that you see right here that's in blue? What he says is, I want this to be on every page. So this is what he calls either header.inc or header.html or header.inc.php. This is the file that will be included at the beginning of every PHP file. All right? What do I mean? If you still don't get it, okay, there's index, there's delete quote, there's edit quote, there's view quote, there's add quote. Let's take a look at all those. What do we see at the beginning? Include templates. Include templates, header. Include templates, header. Include templates, header. Include templates, header. Does that make sense? So now what we're sure of is every time you go to any one of those pages, they should all look the same. They should have the same look and feel to them. That's exactly what he's saying in the book here on page on page 385. So he tells you how to create the header file. And then he says, well, as long as we're doing this, we can also do the footer stuff. And that's this that you see here on 387. That's what's in that footer.inc file. All right? All right. That moves us to page 388 where he talks about logging in. All right? So he says, now it's time to create the script through which the administrator can log in. Okay? So what is he doing? Let's take a look at all the code that you see here and on the next page. All right? By now, those two should make sense to you. Those are just two Boolean variables. We just created them. One is called logged in, one is called error. We're assuming you're not logged in, that's why it's set to false. We're assuming there are no errors, and that's why that's false. Okay? This right here checks to see whether a submit button has been clicked. If a submit button has been clicked, what do you want to check? All right, well, the person, you want to handle what's in the form. So what we're doing right there is we're doing form validation. We're saying if the email is empty, all right, or basically if the password is empty, we're going to say you forgot a field. If one or the other or both. So we're going to say, so if either one of those are empty, we're going to come down here and say, please make sure that both an email address and a password have been added. All right. So assuming that they have, well, if you notice, we say that the email is set to me@example.com and the password is testpass. This is kind of stupid, but these are just what he used. So when you log in, you should log in, and when it asks you for an email, you should type in me@example.com, and when it asks you for a password, you should type in testpass. Does that make sense? If you do all that stuff, it should create the cookie for you, which means that you are now an administrator. Then what he gets to here is he says, okay, if you had any kind of problems doing this, print out what those problems were. If you didn't have any problems and the person is logged in, let them know they're logged in. If they couldn't log in, come back and show them the same form because they had some kind of a problem. All right? So what the hell does that mean? Let's try it. All right, so I'm going to come back here and I'm going to go and run this. And under localhost, I'm going to type in here login.php, not loginx. There it is. Notice, again, header navigation. So what this should be, and I'm going to make mistakes in here. I'm going to put nothing in here. Please make sure you enter both an email address and a password. All right? Well, that's supposed to be me@example.com. I'm going to click it again. Again, it says make sure you enter both. All right? So let's put in me@example.com. And the password is supposed to be testpass, but I'm going to spell it wrong on purpose. All right, so I spelled it wrong. The submitted email address and password do not match those on file. Now let's do it right. me@example.com and testpass. Log in. Do I want Chrome to remember it? Sure. You are now logged in. So now I am an administrator. Does that make sense? So he's shown an admin part of this. And if I want to get out, I can log out. All right. Now, because of the fact that we got a few files that are in the wrong places, it doesn't look beautiful, but we'll try to fix that before the end of the period. All right. So all that stuff that I just explained to you is right here and on the previous page. All right. Also, if you notice this, please look on the screen here at step 5. All right. How many seconds in a minute? 60. How many minutes in an hour? 60. So in other words, the way that he set this up, even if you're logged in as an administrator, if you're on for more than an hour, the cookie will expire, so you'll be asked to log in again. Does that make sense to everybody? I'm not saying, why'd he do that? I don't know. I'm not Larry Ullman. But he set it up like that. You could always change that. In other words, if I didn't set a cookie at all, or I set it to some god-awful number in here, like 3600, and put about 15 more zeros in there, I wouldn't have to worry about it. All right? So again, if you were able to logged in is true. If you weren't, let me know why. So I just showed you those. All right? All right. So it says set the page title and include the header file. Well, ideally, when we came in for our login form, all right, it would have said this at the top. But like I said, there's something screwed up. I'll have to see if I can figure out what that is. All right. But you saw the login form. All right. And it should ask for your email address and for your password. What this is supposed to get us to is right here. It's not, but it's supposed to get us there. That's the administrator side. So only somebody who is logged in and has a cookie on their machine with a name of Samuel and a value of Clemens will get the screen that is now in blue on your page. The reason that that's important is that only an administrator is able to add quotes, view all quotes, etc. So they're the only ones that are able to go in and add stuff to it. All right, that's the key thing. All right. Logging out, what is he doing here? He's setting the cookie to a time that's already expired. He should do more than that, but that's okay. So it says you are now logged out. So you saw that before also. Okay? All right. Then the rest of the stuff that's in here is he goes through how you add a quote, how you modify an existing quote, and how you delete a quote. Why would you want to add quotes? Well, this is a quotes database web app. So as somebody comes up with a cool quote. Eric just said something. Damn, that was good. I want to go and record that so I can put that in there. And I'm sure this has never happened to you in your life, Eric. But Eric, you put that in there and you spell his first name E-R-I-C, which I'm sure has never, ever happened. All right. So it's spelled wrong because it's E-R-I-K. So you might want to go back in and modify it so you can change the source so it's spelled correctly. That's what you do in the update quotes. Okay? Then Eric says, you know what? I didn't really say that. That wasn't really like anything I said. You misheard it. That would be in the delete quotes. Does all that make sense? So when we go in the add quotes here and we look at the code that's in here, we include our template file, and then notice the first thing we do. We check to see whether you're an administrator. If you're not an administrator, if that returns false, just exit. So basically tell them you don't have access to the page, show them the footer, and get the heck out. If you do get down to right here, if you get down to that point that you see right there, all right, then you were an administrator. All right? So if you couldn't make it, access is denied. And if you could, then you start filling in the information. So you come in there and you can put in a new who wrote the quote. The quote, who wrote the quote, whether or not it's a favorite, etc. All that good stuff. Then when you get done, you've got to send that. This sends it out to the database. And he's done a little bit, not much, but he's done a little bit here of work to try to validate this. Notice he's ran it through MySQL real escape string, and he's run it through trim, and he's run it through strip tags. This is all stuff that we talked about in an earlier chapter. But as an example, if I'm putting in a person's last name, and their last name happens to be O'Hara, that's going to fail. That's going to fail because it sees 3 single quotes. So by using the the escape string, that'll change that to this. All right. Why? So it only counts 2 of them. But then you've got to make sure that when you get done, you strip that off when you're actually going to throw it into the database. So you throw it in like this. That's what he's doing right there. All right. So there's his quote. I'm sorry, that's the attempt to insert into the database. Insert into quotes, the name of the quote field, the source, the favorite, and then the actual values that are in there. Then attempt to run the query, and if it works, it'll come back. There you go. Your quotation has been stored. All right, and you show them the form again. Okay. Listing quotes. There it is. The only person who can list all the quotes is an administrator. So if you're an administrator, you get to see this. Editing, again, the only person who can edit is an administrator. So it comes up and it looks like this. You can go back in and you can change anything that's in the quote, or you can change the source of the quote, or you can change whether or not it's a favorite. And you do that through an update command. And they show you the update command. Where is it? If query. There it is. Step 14 on the bottom of page 404. And then finally, you've got delete quotes. All right. So you delete it and it says, are you sure you want to delete this quote? And if you say yes when it comes up, the quote is gone. He creates this pretty little home page. I don't know why ours isn't showing like that. I'll go fix it. I'll work on it right now. All right. So right now, everything that you had was under the 10, 17, 2015, and I told you where to move the different folders and the like to. All right. I'll get the rest of it working. I'll try to get it working by the end of class. Then there will be another thing underneath here. So right now there is the 10, 17, 2015, and then I will have a 10, 17, 2015 updated. And that'll have everything in it, and it will work. All right, I'll try to do that by the end of class. I'll start on it right now. And that, to my knowledge, that's it. All right. So what this chapter attempted to do was to bring in the database stuff that we saw in chapter 12, the cookies and session stuff that we saw back in like chapters 8 and 9, the include stuff that we saw in chapter 10, and a bunch of the earlier stuff that we've been using throughout the book. All right? That's it.